They're graceful and docile creatures that are often hunted for the sport and their meat. But it's not human activity that's threatening Florida's precious key deer, who have been dying at an alarming rate. The culprit is a flesh-eating pest called the New World screwworm.
As that larvae grows, it screws itself down into the flesh, and it eats on living flesh, and it continues to bore down in that flesh, and it can cause all type of injuries to the host.
Entomologists are working to figure out where the infestation came from.
The eradication from the southern United States was completed in about 1966, 50 years ago. And so up until this year, we've been free of screwfly.
The adult screwworm is about the size of a common housefly, but the tiny critter's having a big impact, killing more than 130 deer in just the last few months alone, roughly 10% of this endangered population. Now, with fawning season approaching, biologists fear that the doe will become more susceptible to infection. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife officials on Big Pine Key have trapped and fit 30 female deer with radio collars.
Try to get it so low where you can't hear it anymore. So now you probably hold it up to your ear and then do the sweep to see where it gets louder.
This will help the biologists to track the deer and get an early jump on treatment if necessary. The officials will check the collared deer several times a week and daily once fawning begins.
The wildlife officials are checking to see if the collar's too tight, if she's lactating, if she has any open sores, but she looks in pretty good condition. So we're gonna go on and check for deer number 9.
Now that's a piece of the treated stuff.
Meanwhile, volunteers are teaming up with refuge workers to treat affected animals and prevent the screwworm outbreak from spreading further.
Until we get to the point where the USDA and the screwworm folks say, hey, you guys can, we're feeling really good about this situation. We're gonna continue orally treating the deer. Here's an animal that it lives nowhere else but here, and it really is something that the local community is proud of.
Going through extensive training on how to lure and feed the deer, the volunteers hide the anti-parasitic medication in bread and feed it to the deer. But to ensure treatment of all types of deer, feeding troughs or medication stations have been set up across the Florida Keys.
There's no people involved, so if they are skittish deer, they can just come up to these and feed and get dosed.
The biotechs have also placed wildlife cameras around the stations to monitor the deer. And the treatment appears to be working. Only 2 deer have been euthanized in the past month, compared to more than 70 euthanized in October. Over in Marathon, Florida, the U.S. Department of Agriculture set up a command center to help fight the infestation. Entomologists have released over 60 million sterilized flies from Panama into the area.
The female only mates once in her lifetime. So if we release enough sterilized flies to try to ensure that mating that takes place is to a sterile male, then obviously no offspring are produced.
The hope is that this mating will prevent the births of new screwworm larvae, and visitors leaving the Keys with their pets should look out for animal health check zones. The FDA has cleared over 10,000 pets and livestock traveling to the mainland from the Keys.
Oh, you did so good. You did so good.
But refuge workers say they're not going to leave until the key deer situation is stable.
A key deer is it's symbolic of like what is really special about this area and what's really special about this country, and the fact that people have poured their hearts and souls in helping protect an animal that's really on the brink of extinction.
For UMTV, I'm Danni Dikes.